morning, everyone. Good morning and welcome to this Success and Leadership Breakfast. My name's Mark Beyer. I'm the editor of Business News and I'll be your MC this morning. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and pay respect to their elders past and present. Our special guest today is Charlie Bass. So could we please start by welcoming Charlie? I'd like to thank the sponsors who help us make these events possible. Our Success and Leadership Series host sponsor is the Commonwealth Bank of Australia, and our series sponsors, City of Perth, EY, our newest sponsor, a special welcome to McMahon Holdings, Meerkats, our charity partner, the Harry Perkins Institute of Medical Research, Valrada and WA Super. And thanks as well to the Hyatt Regency for supporting this event. Please join me again in thanking our sponsors. Now, this is the third Success and Leadership Breakfast we've had this year. We started off in February when we had a breakfast with the Premier, Mark McGowan. That was followed by a breakfast with Program Chief Executive Chris Sutherland. And we're busily planning our schedule for the rest of the year, so keep an eye out for future events. Recently, we also had our annual Rising Stars Awards. This is where we celebrate fast-growing businesses and other organisations in Western Australia. We had a record number of entries this year, more than 60, and we handed out about a dozen awards to fast-growing organisations. So that's a really inspiring event to be at. And these awards programs and events, these are the kind of things that we've been doing for many years. In fact, this year is very special for Business News because it's our 25th anniversary. And we're taking this as an opportunity to look back and reflect on the changes that have happened in Western Australia and things that we've been doing. So for instance, these Success and Leadership Breakfasts started in 2002. And the speakers that we had that year might test the memories and the knowledge of some of the younger people in the room. We had Clough Engineering Chairman Harold Clough. We had Alinta Chief Executive Bob Browning, Bunnings Managing Director Joe Boros, and Evans and Tate Chief Franklin Tate. Now, the changes in those four businesses illustrate just how much things have changed in Western Australia. And if you're reading Business News, in recent editions and over the rest of the year, we'll be doing more look-backs. We're also planning a special supplement later this year, and we're planning an event to celebrate our 25th anniversary, and we're looking for businesses who want to celebrate big milestones with us. If you'd like to see a list of guests who are in attendance this morning, you can browse to the URL that you can find on the back of your program. Now, we'll have an opportunity later on for a Q&A, and if you have a question for Charlie, you're welcome to tweet your questions, details up on the screen, or send a text message, or you'll be able to stand up with the microphone and ask a question. So think about questions you might have for later on. Breakfast will be served shortly, at which time some of our staff will come around and collect business cards for the door prize. The Hyatt has donated one night's accommodation in a Hyatt Regency Club King Room plus breakfast for two. And if you go in the draw, one participant will receive a complimentary subscription to Business News or an upgrade to their existing subscription. I'll be back just before 8 o'clock and we'll wrap up just before 9 o'clock. In the meantime, please enjoy your breakfast. Welcome back, everybody. Hope you've all enjoyed your breakfast and your company. I'd like to thank again our host sponsor, Commonwealth Bank, and all of our series sponsors. Today's event will be in our usual Q&A format, and leading the discussions will be my colleague, Business News Chief Executive Mark Pownall, who will now make his way to the stage. It's now my pleasure to introduce Charlie Bass. And there's quite a story. Charlie's had an extraordinary career And one of the most striking things about his career is the way that he's worked in both the mining and the technology sectors over a very long period of time. He started off in mining, studying geology in Michigan, went over the border to Queen's University in Canada to do more studies. He started utilising computing in the mid-1970s when he was with mining company AMAX. AMAX posted Charlie to Australia in the 70s, and we've been benefiting ever since. He established mining software company METEC in 1980 and followed that with gold miner Eagle Mining Corporation. That won both Explorer of the Year and Developer of the Year at Diggers and Dealers. Charlie invested in a telco venture in the 1990s before teaming up with Tony Polly to establish Aquila Resources in the iron ore sector. And the takeover of that business gave Charlie the ability to set up the Centre for Entrepreneurial Research and Innovation in Netherlands in 2015. And followed that with another deal, recently floated copper gold explorer Eagle Mountain Mining on the ASX. So there's a lot to talk about. Welcome, Charlie, and over to you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark, and welcome, Charlie. First of all, I was glad Charlie was here very early, and we were coming up the escalator, and I was very glad to see. We'd agreed not to wear ties, so I was making sure he lived with that and didn't catch me out up here. Charlie, I thought I'd ask a bit of a personal question on that note. One of the things that was holding you back from participating in this breakfast was the fact that you don't like early mornings. And I don't think he'd be alone in this room. I'd certainly share that. Now, history tells me that a lot of successful people are early risers, so I was wondering if you break the mould, or if this just something that comes after success?
Well, my wife Sylvia is the early riser, but I set the alarm.
Right.
And so I am up, but I have to get work done before I can do anything, before I can get in the gym or have breakfast. So I aim up early.
Okay.
But
so you were fooling with me when you
But
said
most people in the office won't see me till about 11.
Gotcha. Okay. That sounds like a good life. So Charlie, now Mark mentioned you studied mining process and geology, but initially it was geology.
Initially it was geology.
And I wondered what drew you into that field.
I grew up in the city. So what does a city boy want to be? But I love camping. I love the outdoors, and I didn't want a job where I just shuffled the paper from this side to this side of a desk. And I thought, what's out there? Where can I match my passion for the outdoors and doing something? And then I discovered geology. And one of the cool things about geology is nobody can say you're right or wrong. And it's kind of, they say, this is why God gave us two hands. Because the geologists say, on this hand, the rock could be this. On the other hand, it could be that. So I'm never wrong. Sylvia will attest to that.
And look, geology to me always seems like such a volatile career. It has its ups and downs that typically flow with the commodity cycle. Would you actually advise young people to do it today after all that time?
The year before I graduated as a geologist, the recruiters were on campus and everybody got a job. The year I graduated, the next year, there was not one recruiter on campus. So it taught me very early on how volatile the mining industry is.
Yep.
But I just love it. It's the challenge, it's a chase. It's discovering something that's, you just don't know whether it's there or not. It's a lot of science, and I love it. That's why I'm doing it again.
I get it. And we will come to what you're up to at the moment and that bit of it. Now, you mentioned, and Mark mentioned, you also studied mining engineering and mineral processing and during that early phase in your career, and you worked in the US and Canada and Australia in the 70s. What did you learn from those experiences, and was there anything different about mining in those locations? Is mining the same everywhere, or was it different?
It's give or take the climate and the surrounds. It is pretty similar because the mindset of the people who are involved in the industry is the same pretty much around the world. It's about creating something physical, whether it's gold or iron ore or whatever, copper. It's about making something. And I think that's there. The differences are pretty minimal. They may come down to environmental or how the government or taxes or whatever. But you're always in remote communities. And I think being in those remote communities in Canada and definitely here has maybe set the scene for what I'm doing now.
Gotcha. And again, we'll come back to that. Now, you said you didn't want to shuffle papers, and I kind of interpret that as you didn't want to sit behind a desk. And yet you ended up in Australia because you could use a computer to crunch numbers. You were sort of an early aficionado of big data and analytics, from what I could tell. Is that true? And
that's correct. When I had finished my master's degree at Queen's in Canada, if I had to learn computers, it was in my undergrad, had to study Fortran. But unfortunately, Fortran conflicted with my ice hockey, so I didn't really get much Fortran. But I got recruited into AMAX, into what was called operations research then. And there were only mainframe computers. And this operations research was 3 areas: cost control, construction scheduling, and ore body modeling and mine planning. And because of my diversity of geology and mining and processing, I was recruited into this group. I knew nothing about computing. They said, here you go, here's some early stage software. And I thought, this is a cool tool.
Yeah.
This can really solve a lot of problems for what we've been doing by hand for hundreds, thousands of years. And so I embraced that technology and helped evolve it.
And does it have any similarity to the technology today, or is it as primitive?
I have so much trouble just turning my PC on, my laptop on today. Forget it.
And that's what brought you out to Australia, right? So the first time or the second time?
Yeah, okay. Just the first time was AMAX. It was a joint venture partner in the Mount Newman mining joint venture.
Yep.
So one of the first iron ore mines in the Pilbara at Newman. And they just sent me out to help them get going on the computerized side of things.
Right.
It was a 6-month secondment, lasted 2 years. But the funny thing is that within the first 3 months of being here, not knowing a soul in Australia, Sylvie and I just felt like we'd lived here in another lifetime, and it was a good life, and that we're not going back.
So you stayed?
And we stayed.
It's always good we like to capture people, don't worry. And then you did a variety of things, but in 1980 you established a mining-focused software consultancy in Perth, and obviously decided it was going to be home. So you mentioned that you felt like you'd lived here another lifetime, but what were the attractions? Why is that so different? I mean, you're a skiing guy, so how come Perth?
That bit I did miss.
Right.
But it was just, so I took the software that I'd been using and took it on to try, and again, back then it was still pretty much mainframes, to use it in a consultancy format or to sell it. Mm-hmm. And that experience, I guess that was my introduction to entrepreneurship, is that first year, if Sylvie wasn't working, I think we debate about whether my taxable income was $14 or $36, but it wasn't very much. But it was something that kept us here. But that experience of working for so many different companies, successful and failures and whatever, gave me the insight to kind of understand how, and it was more although I worked for some of the big companies, it was more the junior and mid-sized ones that I think I learned more from them than, I gave them back what they wanted and plus. But I didn't realize what I was learning at the time.
And were all the big guys using that, had that sort of operation in-house, and you were offering it to the small guys as a consultancy service, or did the big guys not have it as well?
The big guys took it on. Yeah, they took it in, and I'd help them with it. But the smaller and medium-sized ones back then they just couldn't afford it.
Yeah, right.
So it was a lot easier.
So they just didn't pay you.
Come to Charlie and do things for us.
And obviously it worked out. You met Tony Polly in that time. So, and for those who don't know, Tony Polly became your business partner in a couple of big ventures. Right. But how did that happen? How did you meet?
Well, early in the piece with MedTech, Tony was, I think he was a year or 2 years out of uni in accountancy, working for the accounting practice that I was using. And then he went out on his own, and I went with his practice. And we wound up sharing, a ground floor of an office building over in Applecross. And one day he said, wow, we should be doing this ourselves. Why don't we create our own company? So we looked around and found a company that I had consulted for, and things had gone sour with them. They were $1 million in debt, suspended from trading, and we said, oh, okay, how do we fix this up? And paid the creditors off 10 cents on a dollar and renamed it when it was the original Eagle Mining.
Okay. And what did it do? Tell me what happened.
Well, so we had very quickly seen a deal that the majors couldn't do, nobody could do. We were in a perfect position, and it was my first experience at deal making, outside of convincing creditors to take our 10 cents. And did a deal with the original Hunter Resources to acquire or option some of their land up out of Wiluna, which was called Nimri. And it was right next door to Joseph Gutnick's Jundee. And we made this amazing discovery. In fact, we suspended trading because I thought the drillers or somebody was playing games with us. Although we were finding gold, we had this amazing last hole of this program, drill rigs going away. And sorry, maybe I'm not answering your question.
No, it's fine. I want to know.
I called up Joseph and I said, can I borrow a rig? Because I thought somebody was playing games with us. I'd never seen anything like this before. So we drilled another hole nearby, and it came up with similar, and another one. And then we got half a dozen rigs back in, and very quickly we had enough to create a mine on, and I think we went from turning first dirt in August of '93, and we're producing gold at Christmas.
Right. Things moved faster in those days, didn't they?
And a lot cheaper, too. A lot cheaper. So, and then, the detailed story was we were interested in buying, I don't know how many people remember Decrepiny, but he had control of the Mount Lation mine, and we were thinking about buying it. But he wanted some of his people to come in to see Eagle. I thought, why? We're paying you cash. And he couldn't stop drooling. Right. So he did this deal with Joseph Gutnick to fund him to take us out in a hostile takeover. And in those days, we were naive between Tony and I and our friend. We didn't have enough control to really mount much of a battle.
Yep.
And so we got taken out at a reasonable price. Which is very opportune because 2-3 months later, the gold price went from about $5.50 an ounce, which sounds really low today, but then that was okay. It went down to about $2.20 an ounce within a few months. So thank you very much.
Yes. And you can, you're claiming you saw that coming, aren't you?
Yes, I did, actually. I told Tony we got to hunker down. That's where my ski trips get me. I can tell by how much the lift tickets are in places like Aspen as to whether the economy and people are investing or not.
Now, how did your partnership work with Tony? Because you went on to do Aquila Resources, and I don't think that happened immediately.
No,
so there was you obviously had something where the two of you worked well together, and you thought it's time to get the team back together.
We did work Where I was more on the technical bent or seeing things that are out there, and Tony is obviously the more financial guy, and looking at that side. So we were a good team, and some of the people that we had brought in around us at Eagle, they stayed with us into Aquila, which is about maybe 2 years after the takeover. And both Tony and I had been looking at the same things, and we realized that we're looking at the same project, so let's go in and do it together. And then we moved from, that was an old gold mine, the You and Me gold mine, and we both realized that the future was in iron ore and coking coal.
And that was what? That was around the turn of the century, kind of?
That was about 2000.
Yeah, okay, okay. So, I mean, I know it seems like, you know, kind of, it was an overnight success thing, but it's not really, is it?
Yeah, overnight successes are 10 years in the making.
Correct.
And that's exactly what it is, yeah.
So you went for iron ore and you went for coal as well?
For coking coal, because the markets are the same.
Right. And you didn't know too much about coal, I'm presuming?
I'd had a little dabble in coal, but just knew that it had to be coking coal out of the Bowen Basin, and the iron ore was the Pilbara. And because many, many years with Robe River, it was their style of iron ore, lower grade, which everybody is bagging, Fortescue and others on that. But it's very consistent. When things get tight, the steel mills want things to stay on specification.
Right.
And this particular type of iron ore, and Robe's experience is the same, ship after ship after ship.
Gotcha.
So they keep taking it, even though it's a lower grade. Where higher grade and you have bad things in it, they dump it at sea.
Right.
Because they won't accept it.
So it was a little strategic play.
Yeah.
And you brought in a partner, AMCI, I presume because they knew the coal side.
They knew the coal side,
Right.
yes.
And you had a 50-50 joint venture. Now, how does that work? Because I got the sense
doesn't.
that doesn't work. Right. And why doesn't it work, Charlie? Just this is, I think, I'm always interested in how partnerships do or don't work. So for the crowd,
Well, I'll tell you what,
why not?
the only disagreement Tony and I have ever had was 50-50. And I said, well, if we have to do it, give them the majority, or we have it. No, it's not going to work. No, it doesn't, because you're not aligned. You're absolutely, it was about the money. It wasn't about the future. It wasn't about what they wanted out of it, what we wanted out of it.
So it got messy.
It got very messy.
Yeah. And those of us that watched over the years saw that it got messy. So how did you get out of it? What was was that why you sold?
Well, Bow Steel took a big chunk of Aquila and kept buying, and I wanted to, so it's preempting, but I wanted to start setting up our foundation and get and so I would feed them some of my shares to be able to feed the foundation. And I think they got perhaps fed up, thinking it's Tony and I, and AMCI is the right thing. And AMCI convinced them to take us out with Horizon, which is fine, because again, the takeout was at about iron ore was about $110 a ton, and a few months later, 40.
Yeah. And again, you saw it coming, didn't you? So, what was that? That was 2013, 2012?
I'd say,
I think it
seems like yesterday, and yet a long time ago, but around then.
Yeah. And as you say, as you mentioned there, you kind of then had a bit of you were already doing philanthropic things.
Yes.
And maybe you could, talk a little bit about the early philanthropic things you did before you set up your Centre for Entrepreneurial Research and Innovation. So can you recall when you started getting interested or serious about philanthropy?
I've always been, but to do it seriously was maybe the early or mid-2000s, and as a family, we realized that education is the greatest gift you can give. And we realized that it was education for disadvantaged kids, and they're mostly from the country. So like I was saying, wherever, whether it's out here, whether it's Kalgoorlie or Walloona, or it doesn't matter, Moora, or Canada, or the small towns, they don't have the advantages we have, and the kids don't have the advantages we have. So we got to break that cycle that happens out there. So we just started doing so. Two of the major things that we were doing when we started was Wesley had started this Indigenous program, which was very unique. Nowhere else was doing it. In fact, they had a big opening of a center last night. And they bring the kids in from all over Western Australia. And they give them pride in themselves. And they're graduating, and they're going to UW, they're going to universities, they're engineers, they really are changing things. And when they go back to their communities, their homes, they're telling the other kids, you've got to get an education, you've got to learn how to read, you've got to do this. The next thing we were doing was we've been involved with the Ronald McDonald House for many years. And then one day we went in and we asked what the kids fear most, and we thought they were going to say dying or the needles or the pain. And they said, no, when we get better and we go back to school, we're going to be called dumb. And so at Ronald McDonald House, they're all from the country because they've been missing out. And but it's not just the sick kids, it's their siblings who are pulled out of school and they got to live there. So we said, well, maybe we can fix that. And so we supported their educational learning program there. And there are a lot of programs like that we're helping.
And does that drive, is that a driver for being in business, or is you've made the money and therefore now you can give?
I think it was always a desire to give, but it was being able to give in a not as a once-off, to be able to make a long-term commitment. It's like you're starting a business, and most businesses fail within the first 2-3 years. So the same with backing an organization, a charitable organization, is you want to make sure that there's enough there for 5 years to get enough metrics back that it's working or it's not working or whatever.
Yeah.
And so building the kitty in our foundation was to get to that level was pretty important.
Gotcha. So that's advice for everyone out here, right? Got to build.
No, everybody does their own. They do it their own way.
I got it. So, Seri has been taking a lot of your time lately, and in fact, we will get to the mining stuff you come back to. But I think for many of us, we thought Seri was kind of like that was not the end game, but what you would be doing for quite some time. So, what prompted you to establish that organisation, and what's its premise?
Well, there were a lot of different things. It wasn't one flash that said, oh, I got to do this. There were lots of dimensions. One was thinking about the education for disadvantaged kids. I thought, well, what's education at the other end of the spectrum? We're the smartest people around. They're our PhD, they're researchers or PhDs. That's one bit. The other was all these boom busts. And especially that places like Western Australia suffer. And it doesn't matter what color of government we have or what we are, we keep depending upon our iron ore and oil and gas. And it's not going to be there forever. And I reckon within probably 2 generations, that iron ore and oil and gas we can't live off of. Because as a primary driver, tax for the government, for building, for everything else we have, it comes from there.
Yeah.
So we got to be able to create new industries, high knowledge, high value, export-oriented industries. So I looked around and I thought, well, what do we have here? Well, we have a lot of smart people. We have amazing research facilities that are equal of any in the world. And then our youngest son was going to UWA. He wanted to do materials engineering. After his second year at UWA, he goes back and said, we're not doing materials engineering. This is future science, future engineering. So what? We only have 40 kids between first year and fifth year, but we have 400 kids doing civil and mining engineering and all that. So we stopped this. I thought, this is wrong. It's wrong, 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 wrong. So all these different things came together and said, how do we fix this? How do we build something for a generation or 2 generations down the line, not for something that's going to come back tomorrow?
Yep.
And then we started looking around the world, mostly in the US, and going to the Kauffman Foundation, which is in Kansas City, and probably the longest since the 60s has been doing entrepreneurship. And we went to MIT and Stanford and courses here and there and Denver, and seeing what worked and what didn't work. And so, okay, we can do it here.
And CERI, so CERI is a hybrid of some of that, or
Yeah,
it's very much
the
modeled
programs.
on?
The programs that we roll out is a hybrid.
Okay.
So it's pretty unique. It's not an off-the-shelf package.
And it's you're teaching people in academia how to be entrepreneurial, correct?
Well,
Can you teach them?
I'd correct one bit. Teach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. I knew as soon as I went there, I got that wrong.
And I think that's a big issue. Because so many business schools and other universities, they say, oh, yeah, we got to do entrepreneurship. Do entrepreneurship. You can teach, you can read about it, you can talk about it, but you have to do it. You have to be there.
So you're acting more of an incubator and helping people through that process.
CERI is more about trying to pull out, you may or may not have it. A lot of people, most that come, no, they want to do something different. They want to be able to contribute, especially the researchers, those that are in the lab. They want to see their things out in the real world. They don't know how to do it. But the first thing is starting from the heart and pulling certain things out of their heart. And the first is like choice. And are you doing what you think you've got to do, or what somebody's telling you, or what you truly feel, what you truly want to do?
Yep.
Once you have that, you can recognize opportunities and see how to do that. You can learn when they're in their labs, they know up and down and all this stuff, but they have no this way.
Yep.
So we give them this way.
Okay. You expose them to all the...
Yeah, and we put them in totally different kind of people in made-up teams. And then for the second phase, we take them through building a company, from communications through team building, IP, customers. Not how to pitch, invest in my idea. It's your idea is only as good. If you're not solving a customer's problem,
Yep.
you're not doing entrepreneurship, and you're not really innovating.
Okay. And what's your favourite of the... You've got various ones actually operating within CERI or as a hub. What's your favourite of those? Or am I allowed to ask that? Is that like asking a favourite child?
To pick a favorite is so...
Well, what's the most contemporaneous story?
I can talk 2, 3 across different levels. Marion Sturm is a mature age researcher at Royal Perth Hospital and dealing with stem cells. And she's got this process of dealing with stem cells from any healthy person to give them to another person. Initially, it was about organ transplant rejection, and it seems to have minimized that. But it seems to be having a huge success with Crohn's disease. But she's a researcher, she's not an entrepreneur, and she got herself into some corporate trouble before she even knew what she was doing. And we're now, with others and bringing people around her, trying to bail her out so she can move this forward. This is just amazing. There's nothing else like it that we've seen anywhere. Another group is dealing with fiber optic as a sensor. Now, a lot of places already have that, but they've built a different box that's much more, it's faster, more sensitive, sees things different ways. If we had fiber running around here, it would pick us up talking.
Yeah, right.
It would sense somebody just sneaking along. For pipelines, it's just, I shouldn't be talking about this. Where's my, here's the guy who's done it. Stand up, Michael. You want to find out about this? This is the man to see.
And I'm sure lots of people will be very interested in if you can get some cable to hear people talking. I can think of some organisations.
Well, I was just reading this morning about this this hydro dam collapse in Laos.
Yeah, right.
Killed hundreds of people. If they had this fibre across it, they would have seen that coming well before it happened.
Gotcha.
Or made measures to get there. That's the
That's
power
a kind of application.
Yeah.
Right. Look, here we go. I was going to mention there's often questions from Twitter, and we're going to, in about 10 minutes, we're going to get some. I'm going to ask the questions to the floor, so you don't have to tweet them. You can actually stand up. I love that. But I've got plenty of more questions, Charlie, and we're going to get to where you're at. But here's the New South Wales government has started a Sydney school for entrepreneurs. What do you think WA government could do something like that?
That's not the realm of government. Those two words shouldn't be used together in the same sentence. The sad thing out here, for all the money from resort, it's short-termism. The Queensland government has put in something like $500 million into their entrepreneurship and innovation sector, and we put in 20 million. It's pretty sad.
Yeah, right. So you don't mind government putting money in, it's just they can't try and choose where to put it.
A lot of it gets hijacked. It's not really the system is broke.
Yeah.
As an outsider, working very closely, very, very closely with our universities and research institutes as an outsider, you can see, maybe I shouldn't be making this call, but there are better ways than the way we've been doing it.
Look, I really want to take you to Eagle Mountain mining. And I guess, first of all, I didn't check when we were coming up in that.
Yes, I'm wearing.
You wear your bling? Okay.
Yeah.
Bling. Yeah, there we go.
My bling.
So I don't know if we can zoom in or anything, but this is a watch made in Arizona from some of the materials that you're mining, in the cowboy Arizona style. So you can all come and see that from Charlie afterwards. You want to see it up close.
Well, let me explain about the what.
Yeah, go for it.
Most geologists, when they go around and do their show and tell trying to raise money, they take their rock samples around. Well, I didn't want to lug rock samples around, so I took little bits of it and had them put it around the watch.
All nice and shiny.
Our copper and gold.
I love it. But really, what made you go back into mining? Come on, it's like, there's a first of all, there was a bit of a bust, let's remember that, but what drew you back in it? You got Seri going, things are happening, and suddenly but you're back in it.
Maybe the late 90s, 2010, I was asked to help out a Canadian company, a private company, to get listed. And it had a successful exploration play in northern Canada, but it was under a lake and we could only drill when there was about a meter of blue ice, which, what do you do for the other 11 months of the year? So this was copper gold type discovery. Where else is copper gold? And we were looking in Arizona and came across this project. But things went sour. That company couldn't raise any money, couldn't get listed, and it got shut down. So this project was sitting there. And after a while, I decided I'd never seen anything like this before. It was along this belt in this very, very mountainous area. And you could almost see on a clear day, you could see Phoenix from the top of these mountains, but you might as well be 1,000 miles away. It's so rugged. But at the turn of last century, the 1890s to about 1920, there was this series of old high-grade copper mines along there with gold in it as well, one after the other, one after the other. And that belt, these claims, had never been consolidated under one entity. I thought, oh, I'll go have a look-see. Actually, that was some of the first rock that I'd seen up there on the waste dumps, and started doing deals with the landowners and consolidated the land, and then staked all this other land all around it.
You make that
Things
sound
are just-
easier than I think it was. Consolidating a whole bunch of leases held by families.
They were families. Yeah, they were just private families, not mining companies.
Did anyone hold out on you for, you know?
It was a bit of a little bit of a strategy game as to who you had to go to and when. The hardest one actually was the last one. It was a deceased estate with no will and about 10 beneficiaries and scattered all over the US and Mexico. And you had to get every single one of them to sign off. That was
That's a detective story.
that was the hard one.
And so where is it at now? I mean, you listed earlier this year.
In March, yeah.
Yeah, so what was the process to get there and where is it at now?
Well, we've been running this as a going concern project. I've put in a lot of time and a lot of dollars into it, and just thought towards the end of last year, I thought, where do we take this? Am I going to sell it? What are we going to do? Thought, being in the U.S., do we list it in Canada? Do we list it in here? I thought, nah, we got to do it here. And so it was just going through the process of putting the listing together, starting to put a team together in Arizona and Tucson, getting offices, all that again.
Yep.
And then corporate office here.
And obviously the early morning communication is part of it.
Yes, yeah. So that's the problem when your 14, 15-hour time difference is you wake up, you've got a stack of emails, you're going to bed, you've got a stack of emails and talking, and then you got everything that's going on here during the day. So,
No, I can
so much for the early mornings. Yes,
Yeah.
early mornings, I'm at it.
And I've got one last question that I want to ask officially. I've got plenty more, but I am going to warm people up. So if you want to ask a question, we've got some roving mics, and so I'm just going to let Charlie answer this one, and then I'm looking past the lights for some hands up. I was just wondering, in terms of going back to the US, you've been here, decades. Are you using WA know-how? Is this WA know-how to mine in America or not? I mean, or again, it's almost like that question before, or is the know-how the same everywhere anyway?
It's pretty much around the world in the know-how with respect to geophysics.
Mm-hmm.
Let me go back a step. The Americans have forgotten how to explore.
Okay.
They're big companies there. They don't have juniors. And so the big guys, when they want something, they just go and take it, as we've experienced.
Yeah.
So much so that, so this is aside, so much so for insurance purposes, what kind of business are you in? Say exploration. They don't have a coding
Yeah, right.
for exploration businesses. You're either mining and digging stuff out of the ground,
Yep.
or there's no such thing. Anyway, so most of the technology actually that we're using, geophysics in particular, is out of Canada.
Okay.
There are some diamond drilling companies that are in the US, but probably the more experienced ones are out of Canada. A lot of the drilling a lot of those techniques have been developed here and taken over there.
Okay. So there is a bit of Aussie know-how going back.
Yeah, and because of where we are in the world, it's weathered. It's not fresh rock at surface.
Yeah.
It's weathered rock.
So it's,
And we know how to deal with weathered rock out here.
Gotcha. Okay. So there's some strong similarities. Now, is there a question from the floor? Matt, I'll let you go first. There's a mic coming. Yep. Thank you, Rosie.
Matt Burney from Bulls and Bears. Charlie, a terrific talk. I was interested in the comments you made about eagle mining in the early days when you had the old Hunter ground, and some of the amazing results you were getting in that early drill campaign. Being a geologist, I'm guessing that you still know the size of the intersection and the grade of those extraordinary discovery holes. Perhaps you could share one or two of those with us.
It was, depending upon what measures we used, it was anywhere between 90 to 110 meters, probably averaging 6.5 grams over that, and there was some dead stuff in between.
And how exciting was it, really?
Well, when everybody said, and I fought with consultants and all the rest when we were doing the modeling, they said, you can't have that. It's the average out there is 2 grams. There's no way. Yeah, this is wrong. Well,
Nice to be proven right.
in fact, we pulled up a hole, and as a geologist looking at core, you're not supposed to wear your jewelry, and I had to look at my hand to see if I still had my wedding band on, because it looked. Pulled up this core, it was like the wedding band wrapped around it.
I see. I think it's Miriam there, Miriam Borthwick.
Yeah, sorry. From the Harry Perkins Institute of Medical Research. Charlie, just back to CERI, when the challenge of commercialising medical research can take 5 to 20 years quite typically, and the work you're doing at CERI is encouraging the researchers to become entrepreneurial and helping them along the journey, is there also a journey that has to happen to assist investors in Australia to go the distance as well, to invest in something that has a longer projection?
That is a very, very good question. As an investor, you don't have that time frame. What I'm seeing out there is there's certain research, say like Crohn's or other things, where there are lots of people suffering from it. So more from a philanthropic quasi-investor base, you can get those kind of projects perhaps running a lot faster. MedTech is obviously, medical technology devices is a lot easier to get out there and up and running. But the drug side of things, TGA and FDA they're trying to. I think that's the side that will accelerate things. You don't have those 10 years of waiting for FDA approval. If you have something that says this could be absolutely life-saving, if we don't give them this, they will definitely die. So what's the difference? And I think the FDA is realizing this, TGA as well. For those who don't know, the TGA is the Therapeutic Goods and Drugs Administration.
I think there was a question over here.
Yes, hello Charlie, my name's Alex Atkins. Just want you to know there's a table here of mining STEM women and they are all amazing. They're metallurgists, mining engineers, chemical engineers, environmental scientists and company directors at this table, and we're here because we think you're wonderful. I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions. One is, do you know if there's any kind of opportunity there for helping STEM women with self-actualisation in the mining industry? The pipeline to leadership and onto boards for STEM women, is there any initiatives around at all that you're aware of? And my second question, which aligns with the work that I'm doing at the moment on the digital transformation of mining with alternate futures, is what's your vision in the next 10 years of the mining industry? Do you see massive disruption, and what do you envisage for Western Australia particularly?
Multifaceted question. First of all, I mean, I read about women in STEM. I've never encountered a problem myself. Whoever is the best for the job should be doing the job. Sorry to be blunt about that, but that's the way it is. It's a competitive world out there. I think the dinosaurs, those boys clubs, the whatever, I think that's going to go. The mining industry is getting obviously very digital. There'll be less and less of the lower-end workers. I mean, we've seen that already with the trains and the trucks and everything else out there. But that's in the big mines. I mean, you take a little gold mine or copper. Maybe it's a little bit more difficult. Underground's a bit more difficult. But it's all digital. I think AI is going to help an awful lot. Yeah, I think there's a big. We haven't even touched the tip of the iceberg there, is my feeling.
So you're not offering to set up a STEM into mining research institute?
I think it's been there. It's been around for a long, long time.
Next, I don't know if you can answer this, but I think this is almost taking you back to the Aquila days in a way. We're looking at iron ore and things. If this would be an issue to you, that the tariffs created by the US and others, this sort of trade war we've got on. Do you see that? Would you see that as a big issue for the mining sector and our industry?
It's like you got to be a commodities dealer and know the flow of really how much steel is, if it is in fact being dumped in Canada, in the US or Canada or wherever else. Reason I said Canada is there's a lot of iron ore there. There's some in the US. The US steel mills are almost non-existent. Maybe Trump wants to restart them, and that's what the tariffs are for. But it just seems ridiculous to me when they need to rebuild a lot of infrastructure. Where are they going to get the steel from? So maybe this is just a part of the chess game that's being played, but I really don't think the impact with our iron ore mines out here or coking coal mines, I don't think it's going to have a huge effect.
And you're not expecting it to affect gold, copper in Arizona either?
Well, gold's...
Maybe it will.
Gold, I don't know. Copper, my call on copper is, I've always liked copper, always. But now that everybody talks, they're talking electric vehicles and how many kilos of lithium's in there versus 80 or 90 kilos of copper. But that's where the lithium stops. Where in the copper, you need the charging stations. You need to get the power to the charging stations. Here, there, everywhere, through the homes, through the devices. Copper is going to be our future material.
Yeah.
And to get it faster and faster, there's no better substitute. But if you add silver or gold to the copper, it's going to be even better. So that's why we have gold and copper.
Yeah, okay. Nice play. And I don't know, this sort of a variation on a couple of questions, but it's sort of talking about the IP for universities and researchers. What needs to be done for undergraduates and young student entrepreneurs to create sort of the Bill Gates? I think you need a garage, first of all, don't you?
A lot are still in garages. From my perspective and where SERI sits, and why we've looked at the research institutes and universities, is I see about half a dozen different areas where we should be creating new industry out of in Western Australia, or accelerating certain industries that's outside of mining. And usually, and these are industries that are high knowledge, high value, export oriented, that stay here, that aren't designed to go and how do we make $1 billion or sell out here, that stays and drives our economy here well into the future. And you need an industry isn't one company. We need to develop it. And the medical side is certainly one that stands out to me. We've got agriculture, we've got power, aquaculture, we've got the Cyber Center up at Joondalup, we have WAPA, WA Academy Performing Arts. It's unique in the world because it's not just actors and musicians, it's staging and lighting, and nobody else is doing this, and they create amazing things there. Yet we don't see anything coming out of it. We have nanotechnology here that's as good as anywhere. And and these things aren't little bits are coming out, but not industry scale things. And it'll happen. The young ones, they're more doing apps. They're more doing software. There may be something a little bit different. It's a different direction,
Yep.
I guess, to what my vision is.
No, fair enough. Well, look, I'm conscious of time, and Charlie, that really is time. And in the absence of any more questions, I'm going to call that the end of this part of it. I'm going to ask Paul Owen up on stage to provide from WA Super to provide a vote of thanks.
Thanks, Mark, and thank you, Charlie, for your wonderful insights. Ladies and gentlemen, I was delighted when given the opportunity to give the vote of thanks today. WA Super is a keen supporter of the Business News Succession Leadership Series, and I think you'll agree that today's presenter epitomises that title, Success and Leadership. Whenever I hear the name Eagle Mountain Mining, or other variations of it, I think Eagle Rock. I'm just going to turn around once. We've heard lots of fascinating stories, and I'm sure there's stories within stories today that we would love to know more about. But in case you don't know, Charlie also was a speaker at TEDx in Perth last year, and I encourage you to jump online and listen to his passionate, thought-provoking talk. He spoke of the resource curse, the golden goose, and I was fascinated to hear that prior to the 1960s, export of iron ore was actually embargoed in the fear that we weren't going to have enough for our own needs. I also share your concern about the focus on the investment in the resources sector, either directly or indirectly, at the expense of research into other areas. And at WA Super, we are constantly looking for new opportunities, particularly in Western Australia, in support of our very parochial lean. Some takeaways from today. I think perhaps there's an opportunity for a Charlie Bass index, commodities index. So whenever he sells a major interest in a business, it's time to bail because the price is going to dive in the following months. Very interested to learn about your views on 50-50 partnerships and that someone needs to be a majority holder. I'll be talking to my wife about that tonight. And there's a keen interest in watches. I can't wait to have a closer look at the jewellery on your wrist. Look, as I say, I think there's probably a lot more stories to hear within those stories. But Charlie, we thank you for your insights, your inspiration, and your challenges to us. I guess you're here to stay, and we're just crazy about the way you move. Charlie, as a token of our appreciation, please accept this wine from the Rosabrook Single Vineyard Cabernet Sauvignon from Margaret River.
Okay, lots of insights there, Charlie. Really appreciate that. And Paul, you're always bringing unique insight. So thanks again. And also, thanks again to our sponsors. Our host sponsor is the Commonwealth Bank of Australia and all of our series sponsors, City of Perth, EY, the Harry Perkins Institute of Medical Research, Meerkats, Valrada, WA Super, McMahon Holdings and the Hyatt Regency Perth. Time now for the door prize. Rosemary, thanks very much. If you're the winner, please come and see Rosemary after the event has concluded and she will sort you out. This is the one night's accommodation here at the Hyatt in a Regency Club King Room, plus breakfast for two. And the lucky winner is Simone Sharp from the Cancer Council WA. Well, that brings things to an end. As you leave, please put your name tags on the table or out at reception. Hope you've enjoyed yourself this morning and I hope you have a fabulous day. Thanks very much.